portrait of a lonely human being who doesn't know anything about himself, who has very little identity. His identity comes from what people say about him, what people write about him.
Steven Spielberg. The name alone commands respect. For 50 years, he's been Hollywood's storyteller-in-chief. Jaws made people afraid to swim. E.T. made grown adults cry over a glowing finger. Schindler's List reminded the world of cinema's power to confront history. But here's the part few fans ever hear about. For all his genius, Spielberg is ruthless about one thing: discipline. On his sets, filmmaking isn't just art, it's sacred. Every actor, no matter how famous, must show up prepared, humble, and ready to serve the story. And if they don't, Spielberg doesn't yell, he doesn't gossip, he simply shuts the door, permanently. Tonight, we reveal 6 actors who crossed that line and paid the price. And our first story is one of the most talked about clashes in Hollywood history. Number 1, Julia Roberts. The Tinker Hell. Saga Hollywood is buzzing. Spielberg is about to direct Hook, his long-awaited take on Peter Pan. Studios are betting big. Spielberg never misses. And the cast? Pure gold. Robin Williams, Dustin Hoffman, and the hottest young actress in the world, Julia Roberts, fresh off Pretty Woman. But behind the glossy headlines, the cracks were already showing. Roberts wasn't just under pressure. She was breaking. Days before filming, she called off her wedding to Kiefer Sutherland. A scandal splashed across every tabloid. The heartbreak wasn't private, it was public, humiliating, relentless. And then, with paparazzi camped outside her trailer, she was expected to show up on Spielberg's set and embody joy, mischief, and childlike wonder. The role of Tinkerbell made it worse. She wasn't sharing scenes with Robin Williams or Dustin Hoffman. She wasn't part of the playful chaos. She was trapped in a green screen studio, alone, delivering lines to tennis balls taped to sticks. No laughter, no energy, just isolation, day after day, until loneliness turned into frustration, and frustration turned into tension. Crew members whispered, her mood swings, her unpredictability. The nickname was cruel but stuck like glue. Tinker Hell. Spielberg, already drowning in chaos, an exploding budget, sets running 40 days over schedule, endless reshoots, had no time for meltdowns. He ran his sets like clockwork. Roberts, in his eyes, was breaking that rhythm. When asked about her later, he didn't sugarcoat it. It was an unfortunate time for us to be working together. Translation: never again. Roberts didn't let it go quietly. Years later, she said, "Hand to God, not a thing I read about that was truthful." And it really hurt my feelings that Steven hesitated to defend me. It wasn't just professional, it was betrayal. And Spielberg's silence confirmed the rift. When Hook finally premiered, audiences embraced it, but critics pounced. And for Spielberg and Roberts, the fallout was permanent. Spielberg never cast her again. Roberts rebuilt her career, yes, but the legend of Tinker Hell still lingers, a scar from one of Hollywood's most chaotic productions. Number 2, Robert Shaw, The Terror of Jaws. Now let's rewind. 1974. Spielberg is just 27 years old, unknown, hungry, and somehow he's been handed the keys to Jaws, a movie that could launch him or destroy him. The shark was supposed to be the problem. The mechanical beast kept breaking, sinking, refusing to work. But the real terror? Robert Shaw. On camera, Shaw's Quint was perfect. Tough, salty, terrifying. Off camera, he was volatile. Brilliant one moment, a nightmare the next. Shaw was old school, a heavy drinker, a man who believed toughness was earned through suffering, and he had a favorite target, Richard Dreyfuss. From day one, Shaw mocked him, called him kid, dared him to do dangerous stunts, ripped into him for being too soft, too Hollywood. Spielberg later admitted, It became the Great Shaw-Dreyfus feud, and the timing couldn't have been worse. The shoot was a disaster. The shark didn't work. The schedule ballooned. The studio was panicking. Spielberg was barely holding it all together, and Shaw's unpredictability pushed him to the edge. Some days, Shaw was electric. He delivered the famous USS Indianapolis monologue in one chilling take. The crew, hardened by months of chaos, stood frozen, goosebumps on their arms. It was acting at its absolute peak. Other days, he was drunk, cruel, impossible. Spielberg confessed, "Robert terrified me as much off camera as he did on, and yet, that chaos may have been the secret ingredient." The feud between Shaw and Dreyfus bled into their performances. That raw tension on the Orca wasn't acting. It was real. But for Spielberg, it left scars. He respected Shaw's talent. He admired the performance, but he vowed, never again, and he meant it. They never worked together again. 3 years later, Shaw was dead at 51. No reconciliation, no chance to make peace. Just a legend of a shark that didn't work, a set that nearly broke its young director, and an actor who became both the film's curse and its soul. Number 3, Sean Young, the confrontation that cost her everything. Early 1980s, Sean Young was everywhere. She had just broken through with Stripes, was on the cusp of stardom with Blade Runner, and Hollywood insiders whispered she was next in line for superstardom. So when Spielberg began casting Raiders of the Lost Ark, Sean Young wanted in, and she almost had it. Twice she was flown out for screen tests. Twice she stood in Spielberg's office, convinced she was his pick to play Marion Ravenwood, Indiana Jones's fierce, adventurous partner. But when the dust settled, the role went to Karen Allen. That should have been the end. In Hollywood, rejection is routine. Most actors take the hit, swallow their pride, and move on. Sean Young didn't. At a New Year's Eve party, surrounded by industry insiders, she marched right up to Spielberg. "You misled me. I thought I was going to get the part." The room froze. Spielberg, calm, diplomatic, always in control, snapped. "I did not mislead you. I did not." The exchange stunned everyone, and in that single moment, the unspoken rule was broken. Never accuse the most powerful man in the room of dishonesty, especially not in public. From there, the whispers began. "She's unpredictable. She can't be trusted. She leaks details." Whether true or not didn't matter. The damage was done. Years later, Sean Young was still bitter. In interviews, she named Spielberg as one of the powerful directors who, in her words, blacklisted her. She compared him to Ridley Scott and Warren Beatty, all men she said derailed her career by branding her difficult. Spielberg? He never spoke her name again. He didn't need to. His silence was louder than any statement. For Sean Young, the confrontation wasn't just a lost role. It was a career turned upside down. For Spielberg, it was a warning, a reminder that even talent isn't enough if trust is broken. And to this day, Sean Young remains one of the rare stars Spielberg never gave a second chance. Number 4, Robert Duvall, When Politics Trumped Cinema. By the early 2000s, Spielberg had directed some of the greatest films in history, but his trip to Cuba in 2002 almost cost him his reputation. Here's the story. As part of a US-approved cultural exchange, Spielberg traveled to Havana. He brought 8 of his films, screened them for Cuban audiences, met with Havana's Jewish community, and even laid flowers at the city's Holocaust Memorial. But the headlines weren't about movies. They were about one meeting, Spielberg sitting down with Fidel Castro. To Spielberg, it was diplomacy. To Robert Duvall, it was betrayal. Duvall, Hollywood veteran, Oscar winner, a man who played Tom Hagen in The Godfather, went on national television and unleashed. How could Spielberg, who makes films about democracy and freedom, sit down with a dictator? And then the dagger. Maybe he should build a little annex to the Holocaust Museum for the Cubans Castro killed. The words burned. Spielberg wasn't just being criticized, he was being accused of hypocrisy. His team rushed to clarify. This wasn't political, they said. It was cultural. The trip was fully authorized by the US government. Spielberg wasn't endorsing Castro. He was sharing art, but the damage was already done. In the wake of 9/11, with America hardening its stance on Cuba, Duvall's attack hit like a thunderclap. Spielberg was stunned. He had admired Duvall for years, had even considered him for DreamWorks projects. But after that very public betrayal, the door closed forever. Duvall didn't soften, not then, not years later. He doubled down. I just don't get it. Spielberg shouldn't have gone there. Period. And so, unlike his creative battles with Roberts or Shaw, this wasn't about clashing personalities or chaos on set. This was deeper, principle versus perception. For Spielberg, it was the lesson that even off the set, even in the realm of politics, one wrong step could erase the possibility of collaboration. For Duvall, it was a line he refused to cross. The result? 2 Hollywood giants. No film, no partnership, just silence. Number 5, Ryan O'Neal, Ego versus Discipline. The 1970s, Ryan O'Neal was riding high. Love Story had turned him into a household name. Paper Moon cemented his stardom. He was one of Hollywood's golden boys. And Steven Spielberg, a young director with fresh ideas, rising fast after Jaws and Close Encounters. On paper, the pairing looked perfect. A star with charisma. A director with vision. What could go wrong? Everything. From the very first meetings, Spielberg and O'Neal clashed. O'Neal carried himself like old-school Hollywood royalty. He expected scripts bent around him, schedules adjusted to his needs, and deference from everyone on set. Spielberg was the opposite. He built his reputation on discipline, collaboration. Every crew member treated with equal respect, from the lead actor to the last extra. To O'Neal, Spielberg seemed controlling. To Spielberg, O'Neal's ego was poison. The tension didn't stay private. At industry events, O'Neal allegedly made offhand, inappropriate remarks about co-stars. Spielberg saw it as betrayal. Loyalty to him wasn't negotiable. It was sacred. And once that bond was broken, there was no going back. Spielberg didn't explode. He didn't air dirty laundry. That wasn't his style. Instead, he used the sharpest weapon Hollywood has: silence. Despite O'Neal's fame, Spielberg simply moved on. Cast other actors. Built films around people who thrived under his system. Tom Hanks, Harrison Ford, Richard Dreyfuss. O'Neal, meanwhile, grew bitter. Friends recalled him waving Spielberg off as too precious, too self-serious. He dismissed Spielberg's collaborative style as micromanaging. But history has the final word. As the 1980s reshaped Hollywood, Spielberg rose into legend. Ryan O'Neal, once a superstar, slipped from the spotlight. Their paths never crossed again. No second chances, no reconciliation. Just a what if? 2 men from 2 eras of Hollywood, destined never to meet in the middle. Number 6, Marlon Brando, Chaos versus Control. If Hollywood ever had a god of acting, it was Marlon Brando. Unpredictable, brilliant, wild. The man who gave us A Streetcar Named Desire. The Godfather, Apocalypse Now. He reinvented what it meant to be an actor. And then there was Spielberg, a master craftsman. Every frame meticulously designed. Every camera movement planned like an architect drafting blueprints. 2 legends, 2 completely different philosophies. And when their worlds collided, it was doomed from the start. On paper, the idea was irresistible. The wunderkind of blockbusters directing the most legendary actor of his generation. People whispered it could be historic. But in private meetings, the cracks appeared instantly. Spielberg showed up with storyboards, precise shot lists. He believed filmmaking was a delicate machine, every gear in perfect place. Brando wanted none of it. He demanded script control, insisted on improvising dramatic moments. Spielberg pushed back. You can't build a film around uncertainty. Not at this scale, Brando smirked. To him, uncertainty was the point. He once quipped, in what many believed was a jab at Spielberg, "Some people make movies like clockmakers. I prefer to smash the clock and see what happens," producer Kathleen Kennedy put it bluntly. Brando operated according to his own logic, a logic that ignored production realities. Translation? He was chaos in human form. Spielberg admired the genius. He respected the legend. But he knew Brando's style would sink a big-budget project. Entire collaborations collapsed before a single frame was shot. Meetings ended in stalemates. Dreams of a Spielberg-Brando film evaporated into Hollywood myth. Brando dismissed Spielberg as part of the Hollywood machine, a director more obsessed with box office than with truth. Spielberg, ever diplomatic, kept his public praise intact. Brando was brilliant, but impossible to direct. And so it ended. No screaming matches, no public war, just silence. Two titans who could have created something unforgettable. Instead, they left behind only rumors and what-ifs. Spielberg, the clockmaker of cinema. Brando, the man who smashed clocks. And in the end, their philosophies canceled each other out. A missed opportunity that still haunts Hollywood lore, from Julia Roberts to Marlon Brando. Spielberg's career proves something. Even the greatest director in Hollywood history has limits. Break his trust or disrupt his vision, and you're out forever. So tell me, which of these feuds shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe. We've got more Hollywood secrets coming your way.